Hi guys, right now we're going to go ahead and do Unit 6, Lesson 6, write expressions where letters stand for numbers. A little bit out of breath because I just ran up and down my stairs a couple times. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So the learning targets for today are I can use an expression that represents a situation to find an amount in a story. So here we see expression, and I believe I mentioned this in a previous video, but an expression does not have an equal sign where an equation does have an equal sign. So this right here is an example of an equation, and if you get rid of the equal sign, you have an expression. Alrighty. And so it looks like we're going to be solving some problems that have a context or in a story, and so we're going to need to interpret those. Now the next learning target is I can write an expression with a variable to represent a calculation where I do not know one of the numbers. So using a variable or a letter to represent the unknown number. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and get started on 6.1, the warm-up. It is an algebra talk, but again, we can't really do a number talk because you're by yourself at home. But it says, if x is 6, what is, and then it wants you to solve each expression. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the number 6 and you're going to plug it in as x. So for example, the first one says x plus 4. If you plug a 6 in right here, you now have 6 plus 4, which is equal to 10. Go ahead and try the rest on your own and unpause the video when you're done. Okay, looking at the next one, we have 7 minus x. We're going to change this to 6. And we have 1. All right, the next one, it may be a little tricky. You might not know what this means, but what that is the squared symbol. And what squared means is that you're multiplying the number by itself. So this is really saying x times x. Now, if you had 10 squared, it would be 10 times 10. If you had 100 squared, it would be 100 times 100. But we know what x is, so we can go ahead and solve it. X is 6, so we have 6 times 6. And the answer to that is 36. All right, last one is 1/3 x. And remember, when it's right next to the number like that, that's really saying 1/3 times x. So let's go ahead and plug that in. And we have 1/3 times 6. This is really 6 over 1. You need to multiply the tops and multiply the bottoms. And we have 6 over 3. Now 6 over 3, or 6 divided by 3, can be reduced to 2. The answer to this one is 2. Okay. If you have questions on this one, please let me know. I'm going to go ahead and move on to 6.2. Lemonade sales and heights. So, Lynn set up a lemonade stand. She sells the lemonade for 50 cents per cup. Complete the table to show how much money she would collect if she sold each number of cups. Okay, and as you can see in the table, this is where you see how many cups she sold. And the bottom row is how much money she's collected in dollars. So in order to find this, we are going to have to multiply the price per cup times the number of cups. So for the first one, we're going to have 12 times 50 cents, or 0.50, and that's going to give us our answer. Now, we could go ahead and solve this like we know how to solve decimals. You're just going to ignore the decimal until the end. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 5 is 10. Put a placeholder here. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 5 is 5. Add these together. Now is where the decimal point matters. There are 2 spaces here past the decimal, and so we're going to move this decimal 2 spaces and end up with 6. Now, an easier way we could have done this is 50 cents is half of a dollar, and so we can see that 6 is half of 12. So whatever your dollars is going to be half the number of cups. So for the first row, we can go ahead, or first column, we can go ahead and put a 6 right there. Okay, let's look at the next one. 183 cups. Wow, that would be a really successful lemonade stand if we sold that many cups. All right, so if you would like to do this the long way, you are going to do 183 times 50 cents. I know this whole first row is going to be 0 because 0 times anything is 0. Put a placeholder here. 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times 8 is 40, plus 1 is 41. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 4 is 9. Add all these up. And now we have to move our decimal 2 places, and we end up with 91.50. Now, sometimes we make mistakes in our math, and so just to make sure that's the right answer, I'm going to go ahead and add 91.50 plus 91.50 and see if I get 183. 0 plus 0 is 0. 5 plus 5 is 10. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. And 9 plus 9 is 18. Perfect. So the answer here is 91.50. They collected $91.50 when they sold 183 cups of lemonade. Okay, so as I mentioned before, another easy way we could have done it is we could have just taken 183 and split it in half, since we know that 50 cents is half of $1. All right, the last one says C. So we don't yet know what C is until we look at B. And B tells us how many cups did she sell if she collected $127.50. Be prepared to explain your reasoning. I want you to take a minute, pause the video, and try and reason with how we could go about solving for C. Okay, so I just want to point out that we know that the $127.50 is going in this column and not where C is. So if we know that 127.50 is half of C, we need to do the opposite of half in order to find it. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to either multiply 127.50 by 2 or add it together. I choose to do addition. You could have done multiplication, whichever is easiest for you. 0 plus 0 is 0. 5 plus 5 is 10. 7 plus 7 is 14. Plus 1 is 15. 2 plus 2 is 4. Plus 1 is 5. And 1 plus 1 is 2. Now we're going to move our decimal place down, and we're going to end up with C equals $255. All right. We're going to go ahead and move to 6.3, building expressions. Okay, number 1 says, Claire is 5 years older than her cousin. Okay, so I'm just going to make a note right here for myself. Cousin plus 5 equals Claire. Now, I wrote it like that just to make sure I'm not getting confused between cousin and Claire. Now, it says, how old would Claire be if her cousin is 10 years old, 2 years old, or X years old? So now that I wrote it like this, we can kind of just put these amounts in the place of where her cousin is. So the first one says 10. So 10 plus 5 equals 15. The next one says 2 years old. We can put a 2 plus 5 equals 7. And then the last one says X years old. So we don't know what X is, so we're going to go ahead and just plug X in here, plus 5. And our answer to this one is just going to be X plus 5, because we can't solve it any further. All right. I know that this last one is kind of confusing because you're not used to giving that as an answer, but if that's all the information that you have, that's totally fine to leave it like that. B says that Claire is 12 years old. How old is Claire's cousin? So in this one, we're kind of working backwards from the ones before. So if you look at my note that I wrote up here, cousin plus 5 equals Claire. Well, in this case, we know that Claire is 12 years old, and we know that her cousin plus 5 is equal to 12. But in this case, her cousin is the unknown number, or the X. So we need to figure out what number plus 5 is equal to 12. And if you remember from the last lesson, we know how to do that. We need to get X all by itself. And in order to do that, we have to get rid of this number right here. So in order to get rid of plus 5, we have to do the opposite, which is minus 5. And we're going to do that to both sides, because what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. And you're going to end up with X equals 7. So, Claire's cousin is 7 years old. All right. Let's go ahead and look at the next one together. Diego has 3 times as many comic books as Han. Okay, so I'm going to make a note right here. Diego times 3 equals Han. How many comic books does Diego have if Han has 6 or N? Okay, let's think about this for a moment. I want you guys to go ahead and try this on your own. So pause the video and give it a try now. Okay, I hope you gave it a try. So the first one says that he has 6 comic books. Okay? So Han has 6 comic books. Okay? We know that D times 3 is equal to 6. So this is just like the last problem. and you're going to have to figure out what times 3 is equal to 6. Just a second. Oh my goodness. Actually, I did this wrong. I'm sorry. Scratch that. Okay, what it actually should be is, I got a little bit confused by the wording. So Diego has 3 times as many comic books as Han. Okay, so that what that is actually saying is that Han times 3 is equal to Diego. I'm sorry if I confused you. So whatever amount Han has times 3 is the amount that Diego has. So if Han has 6 books, we know that Diego has 3 times that amount. So we're going to do 6 times 3, which is 18. Okay, now for n books, just like the one above, we know that 6 times n is just equal to 6 times n, or 6n. If Diego has 27 comic books, how many comic books does Han have? So here we know that Diego has 27. And so we need to figure out what times 3 is equal to 27. Now, if you know your math facts, you may know that easily, but if you don't, you're going to have to solve this algebraically. So you're going to have to get rid of this times 3 by doing the opposite, which is divide by 3, and you're going to have to do that to both sides. The answer is that he has 9 books. Okay. Sorry for the confusion on that one. We all make mistakes. Moving on to number 3. 2/5 of the vegetables in Priya's garden are tomatoes. Okay, so 2/5 of, and I don't know if you guys remember, but of always means to multiply. So 2/5 of the vegetables in Priya's garden, I'm going to put a V for vegetables, are tomatoes. Okay. How many tomatoes are there if Priya's garden has 20 vegetables? X vegetables. Okay. So, first of all, I'm going to plug in 20. And it's going to be 2/5 times 20 equals how many tomatoes? So go ahead and try that on your own. Pause the video and try to do 2/5 times 20. Okay. I hope you tried this on your own. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make 20 over 1. First thing we need to do is 2 times 20, which is going to give us 40. And then 5 times 1 is going to give us 5. Now remember, we learned in a previous lesson that the bar right here means divide by. So 40 divided by 5 is equal to 8. 8 tomatoes. All right, let's look at the next one. X vegetables. So I'm going to go ahead and put 2/5 and an X here. And we already know that this is the final answer for that because I cannot solve it further. All right, last one is B. Priya's garden has 6 tomatoes. How many vegetables are there? This one's a little tricky, but we know that 2/5 times X is going to equal 6. And so in order to solve that, we're going to need to do the opposite. So remember, we are going to have to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. And so in order to get rid of the 2/5 in front of the x, we're going to have to divide by 2/5, which is going to look like this. 2/5 divided by 2/5. And once we do that, that's going to cancel that out. And this will just become x. But we also have to do it to this side. All right, now we have 6 divided by 2/5, which is the same thing as 6 times 5/2. Remember, when you divide by fractions, you multiply by the opposite, by the fraction flipped. So now let's solve that. 6 times 5 is 30. 1 times 2 is 2. And 30 over 2 is equal to 15, or 30 divided by 2. So we are left with x equals 15 here. Okay, if you're feeling really good about how to do this, I really would like you to try number 4 completely on your own, just so that you're feeling confident and good for the practice problems. If you're feeling like you kind of get it, maybe let me set the problem up for you and then try the rest on your own. If you're completely lost, just keep watching and do your best, and you can reach out to me for questions that you have. Okay. A school paid $31.25 for each calculator. If the school bought X calculators, how much did they pay? So, go ahead and try it on your own if you can. This is like the ones above where we don't know the amount, we just know that it's X. But in order to solve this problem with whatever X is, we would multiply it. So the answer to A is $31.25 times X, or 31.25x. B says the school spent $500 on calculators. How much did the school buy? Okay, this is now where we plug the problem in. So we now have $31.25 times 500. Okay? If you're feeling good about this, go ahead and try and solve that on your own. I will walk you through how to solve it otherwise. I know that 0 times any number is 0, so I'm going to have 2 full rows of zeros. Moving on to my third row, I have to put 2 placeholder zeros. Now 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. And 5 times 3 is 15. Now I need to add all those numbers together, but that's easy because we have 2 rows of zeros. So I'm just going to take this last row and I'm going to move the decimal over 2 places. And I'm going to end up with an answer of $15,625. That is how much, not dollars, 15,625 calculators. Okay, please let me know again if you guys have questions. I know that sometimes it can be tricky to interpret the words of the story. I know I had a lot of trouble, or I made a mistake at least on number 2 with interpreting the question. So just do your best, read super carefully, and email me at campbell.lindsay@lusd if you have questions, and hopefully I'll